What's going on, man? Hey, you hear me all right and everything?
You're clear as a bell. Look at that.
How about that? You sound good too. I'm shocked. Now I lost you. What happened there?
Properly. I don't know. It's saying something. I'm going to cancel that. You're fine. You're fine. Let me close my door.
Every time.
There you go. There we go. You still there?
There we go. I'm still here.
All right. What's going on?
Not too much, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. We're hanging in. We're doing it. It's gorgeous weather out here in Michigan. And
what's it like temperature-wise?
It's actually cold this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gotten cold for some reason, but beautiful clear skies yesterday.
We were watching the U.S. soccer game last night in Chicago, and they all had jackets, and I was like, "What in the world?"
Yeah, it's weird how it looks beautiful, but it's cold.
Yeah. Here it looks beautiful, and it's like 1,000 degrees. I don't know if you remember. We used to joke about this all the time, but it's like you don't need to tell me it's 90 degrees, but it feels like 110. Just say it's 110.
Just say it's 110. Cut to the chase.
Because all I mean is, what does it feel like? I don't really care what the actual.
I don't either. Right? The barometric pressure and all that stuff.
Just what do you know what it actually is?
Yeah. Are you recording?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just check it. Let's start that thing.
What, are you gonna say something really inappropriate or what?
Yeah. No.
Hey, tell me when you start recording so I don't drop the F-bomb.
Okay. Yeah. That reminds me of a story. No, I'm just playing. Let's get this thing rolling, right? Five best. We're going through the 5 best. I'm Jason, and that's my buddy Greg. Hey. He actually runs the show. He's out in San Antonio. I'm here in Muskegon, Michigan, out in the boonies, and we connect once a week and we talk about the 5 best things we've experienced, witnessed, or have happened to us, or something.
Yeah, that's right. That's an awesome description of what we do, Jason. Thank you for that.
Yep. And I think I start.
No, because this is episode 18, right? I think.
Dang it, 50-50 shot.
Yeah. Samsonite. That wasn't even close.
Here's a chance.
All right. I get to go first.
So you start.
I do start, but first, I did some research ahead of time. I did some research.
Okay.
And as far as I can tell, iTunes no longer counts to 300, so I have no idea where we are on the podcast rankings. But I will say, if you are listening to this, please subscribe. It makes it easier for other people to find it. And actually, if you rate it, that helps too. Now, preferably you rate it well. That would be great. So tell everybody that this is the podcast you like to listen to. Rate it on the podcast, on the iTunes thing. Subscribe. All of that makes it super easy for people to find.
Nice.
So yeah, anyway. All right. My first one is just one of those really crazy things that's going to be hard to talk about. But last Wednesday night or Thursday morning at like 2:00 in the morning, my brother got caught in a flash flood, and he was out skateboarding at like 2 a.m. because that's the sort of thing my brother does.
This is your little brother, right?
Yeah. And he lives next to the park, so he can go do that. Like, that's part of why he's there. Like, and he kind of orients his life around some of that kind of stuff, and he just loves doing it. So a buddy kind of came over, and they agreed to go, and they went, and it started raining, and was like, we've been here before when it rained, we should be all right. And then it just turned horrific. The rains came just ridiculously fast, and that's why they call it a flash flood warning, because it happened with almost, like it just, the flash part of it was so quick, like it just happened. And it ended up pulling my brother like almost 2 miles across downtown San Antonio, basically through I don't know if you remember, Jason, or not, but there's all these like the waterways in downtown San Antonio are designed to kind of feed into the San Antonio River, which is a man-made river, which is what the Riverwalk is on. But there's all these rakes and grate systems and things to stop huge trash from going into downtown where people like to walk and be by restaurants and stuff. And so he just got pulled through there like crazy. And he ended up what eventually kind of how he got out of it was he eventually got his foot stuck on one of those rakes, and he just kind of laid there stuck and pinned against this cement barrier. And those rakes run on a chain kind of pulley system. So they move through the water, like rise and fall. So that they get stuff, and it's kind of more random, I guess, or whatever. And so in kind of trying to catch all of his energy and his breath and figure out if he was going to survive or not, he spotted these chains, and he figured he's going to give it one last shot to get to these chains. So that's what he did. He made it to the chains, he grabbed on, and then that kind of, he used the mechanics of the chain and the pulley system to kind of pull himself to safety. The guy he was with did not have that happen. The guy he was with died in the water, like drowned in the water that night.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it was pretty crazy. And I went to bed Wednesday night like, hey, nothing. We knew the storm was coming. Woke up Thursday morning, and some random person I'd never met before had put on Facebook, hey, if you're friends with Josh Richards, get in touch with me. He's in the hospital. I was like, what? And so he's pretty much come out of it with no broken limbs and no other crazy stuff. He's got a bunch of deep bruises and cuts, and is missing a lot of skin on his legs. But
oh my goodness!
But it's just it's an insane story, and it's one of those like the reason it's on my 5 best, because it's obviously not a best, but it's one of those events that sort of gives you perspective on a bunch of other things. So yeah, it's just one of those just crazy, harrowing, just nuts stories. And my brother has a bunch of those because that's who my brother is. But it's yeah. So for me this week though, like the rallying people had around my brother, and the amount of people who have been like, how can we pray for him? What can we be praying for? How can we help? Can we bring him food? All this kind of stuff. And it's been tiring and exhausting and exhilarating and all of that stuff. But I think the best here is the way people respond to that sort of tragedy and just kind of just brutal experience, that they want to help and they want to be there for my brother, even though they don't know my brother at all. A lot of them because they know me, and that's really cool. Like I love that part of community. And it's also been, people who do know my brother who are reaching out and like, hey, is he okay? What's going on? Can we help? And it is an interesting dynamic. Without Facebook, I don't know when we would have heard where he was or what he was or any of that stuff. Because the guy I've never met on Facebook put his name, so somebody saw it and forwarded it to my mom, and she forwarded it to us, and he didn't even know the hospital or anything, so we just started calling around on Thursday morning and found the hospital that he was in, and my dad went and got him out of the hospital. But it's like, I have no idea. He had no identification because that all got swept away, and it's just kind of crazy. So just it's an amazing story on a bunch of levels. And my brother, says pretty honestly that at 12 or 15 different times he thought for sure he was done, and that just something miraculous kind of kept him alive the whole time. So
I see. I can't. I don't understand flash floods. I can't.
Right.
Because since I've never seen one.
Yeah.
But I've been in places where they happen.
Right.
And I can't. Like, have you talked to him about like I don't know, what part of the city was it? Like, how does that stuff even happen?
Yeah. So I'm not totally clear on all the logistics of it, like all the mechanics of it, but he was in San Pedro Park, or right around San Pedro Park, which is just on the outskirts of downtown San Antonio, and it pulled him basically from the north side of San Pedro Park, so kind of by where our buddy Phil used to live.
Yeah. But
across San Pedro, and it pulled him to the other side of 35 from there.
Oh my goodness.
Which is just nuts.
So it's just a river running
real far
straight
from where you guys are, from
Yeah.
where Perez was. But yeah, so it's just a creek. Like there's San Pedro Creek, which is just this little creek. But then when it rains like that, so the creek rose from 3 feet to 15 feet of water in less than a half hour.
Oh my goodness!
On that night, like that was, I just saw that in a report recently. I was like, man, that like I can't fathom it either. But it's just crazy. So one of my 5 best is that my brother's still with us, and I'm, it's been really cool to be able to see him sort of start to process that. And
did he move to San Antonio like right after I left?
Yeah, I think that's what, almost exactly. Like you left in October and he came in December, I think.
Oh wow,
something like it. Might have been the next year, but it was some pretty close.
Yeah, those moments where you are just totally out of control, and even worse than that, like you don't even know you're out of control. Like your brother was, like you were sound asleep.
Right.
That's just those are really like earth shaking. Like there's those moments that there's a like pre that, and then there's a post that. They're defining moments. Like this will be one of those like, wow, it's a miracle that brother Josh is still with us. That's I don't know. There's not much more to say about this, but it's a 5 best, the craziest of wildest ways. And what was the name of the young man who died?
Gary. I can't remember his last. I didn't know Gary very well, but he was a good friend of Josh. Like, they would go out. They did that all the time. Like they would go out late and skate or spray paint or whatever. Like it was just kind of. That's what they did. They hung out and skated, and were good friends.
Wow. Well, that's wild. All right, I don't even know how to follow that yet.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to get that out of the way though, because otherwise it's going to bother me all the time. So.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's I guess my first one would be in the latest magazine. There's the last word is a interview with Louis C.K. and one of the questions, what have you learned about yourself from being a father? And Louis says, I've learned I have more value as a human being than I thought I did. Be of use to other people. That's a very powerful thing. And I there's so many things that, like Louis C.K. up once every couple months, or I don't know. It seems like I really appreciate just how thoughtful of a person that guy is, and it's countercultural and in a really cool way. But I was just struck by the depth of he was just in some silly interview and he's talking to some guy. He's talking Rolling Stone magazine. And he's supposed to be making light of all this stuff, but there's genuine truth to that answer, and I just appreciated it. I appreciated, like, in the pop culture magazine that's really just consumed with what's going wrong or what rock and roll's up to, that you can find good nuggets of truth. And it just springboarded me into a thoughtful afternoon. Like I was like, man, that is true.
So there's this fascinating thing, right? That happens, and more than like the observation that he just makes this really true point in this really strange place. To me, I'm fascinated by the true observation. Because there is this dynamic. Value is a strange word, right? It has these economic things floating around behind it, in my head at least. And so he has value now that he never would have thought he would have, which is telling and insightful and all that stuff. But it does make me like one of the things that happens when people retire is there's a lot of like right around retirement depression that happens with older folks, and it has to do with how we think about value. because they moved from being people who were
useful, like have a pragmatic.
Yeah, they were making and producing, and now they become entirely consumers. So instead of producers and consumers, which is largely what we are as adults, they go back to being just consumers, which is largely what they were as children, right? But but there's a devaluing that happens when that happens as well. So there's a way in which culturally, it's just really interesting. Like what he's naming there as a father has, and I could be wrong with this, but it feels like it has a time stamp on it, right? Like there's an end date to that at some point where you'll like if he yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about it because I'm just speculating in our own cases of like, man, like 10 years from now, what's my life going to be like? And it does seem like we have to learn to have value and to recognize value in each other. That's not just tied up in those roles, which I don't think is what he's saying, by the way. It's just that's a second thought, not a rejection of Louis C.K.'s point. It's just I know what he's naming, like that there is something about work and roles and caring for other people and all of that stuff gives us a value that we would not have had without it.
Yeah. I think there's what I liked about it was also mainly was that first stuff you were naming, that it's just in an unlikely place, and I wasn't expecting to be brought into a philosophical mode from Rolling Stone magazine and from Louis C.K. the comedian. But I also like the truth side of that is I'm always looking for good ways to describe feelings I have around being a dad. I cling to Rich Kawisha. He once told me, like, being a dad taught me that I could love more than I thought I could love, and I think that's a good description. I think I held on to that, and I hang on to this, and in the same way I like and we've picked this out before too. I like the new projectness of being a dad. And I've said, Steve Atkins said, having kids is like a bow and an arrow, and you can shoot them much further than you could ever possibly go. And I like that. This has that hopeful tinge of, man, I didn't know why I was here until I saw that God could use me to make a better version of myself and a worse version, because our kids they have flaws too.
Maybe your kid,
but maybe your kid. I appreciated that. Yeah, it's another tool in my toolbox that put a finger on, because there's so many reasons I love being a dad.
Yeah,
and that's just another one of them. It in the same way that being a sponsor keeps you clean. Being a dad makes you a better believer. It makes you a better person. It makes you a better, I don't know. So
no, I like that.
That's my one of my 5 best.
I think one thing in there, Jason, that Louis C.K. does that always fascinates me is he's just honest, right?
Yeah.
All he's doing is telling the truth most of the time. Now, and we might agree or disagree with him on certain things or whatever, but generally, the thing that's alarming or guard, like when you set your guard down or it's just disarming that way, is just how honest he is. I think there's a lot that preachers can learn from Louis C.K. on that front, that more often than not, our tendency to flower things up or whatever, but he's just as honest about that stuff. I love that.
Yeah. And later in the article, it was a it was cool that Chris Rock he what's the best advice you've ever gotten? And Louis C.K. says this. Chris Rock told me recently, you have a disease, and that disease is that you can't do nothing for 1 month. And I like to, because with that truth, there's, we come back to this. There's just an honesty, there's a humility. There's a, man, I'm messed up. That's inviting. Like you said, that drops our guards down. And it invites us in. It's cool. Cool little question and answer part.
Agreed. All right, my number 2 is another person who was ridiculously honest. Muhammad Ali died this week,
wow.
Which is like, we gotta start doing these podcasts where somebody super famous hasn't died.
Yeah.
But yeah, Muhammad Ali, like I'm not a guy who like grew up with like Muhammad Ali posters and like knew every quote or things like that. But I was always impressed by Muhammad Ali in a bunch of different ways. The most obvious one for me was my dad was a Marine and thought very highly and does think very highly of the military and armed forces. And so I remember learning when I was a kid that Ali had gone to prison for not being in the military. And in my house, that was like, you go in the military, right?
Yeah.
But I remember like there's a list of people that would come out about of like, oh, this guy didn't go to Vietnam or this guy didn't go to Vietnam or whatever, right? But Muhammad Ali didn't go to Vietnam, but he did go to prison. And for my dad, that was, at least the way I remember it as a kid, him talking about Muhammad Ali was, this is the way you're supposed to do it, right? Like my dad always thought of him as the heavyweight champ because even though he gave up his title when he went to jail, he fought his way back up the ladder when he got out of jail. And that was like, to my dad, that there was something noble and honorable about that, even though he disagreed with where Ali was coming from on going to jail in the first place. But to start over from scratch and to work your way back up and win the heavyweight belt was like, that's my earliest memory of Muhammad Ali, is my dad having this respect and honor for Ali, even though I also knew my dad radically disagreed with him on that stuff. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Same with you. I wasn't the hugest fan, but I did at all times know that Muhammad Ali was tough as nails and to be like the greatest fighter of all time, And I think I've told this story, but when I was working at St. Andrews, I was working with a younger lady named Lexi Larison, and she said, "Hey, that's my best friend." And I was reading what's his face's book, the story guy, Don Miller. I was reading his, a million miles and whatever. And the challenge of that book is tell a good story for Jesus. And I was like, I don't have a best friend, and my best friend, my story should have a best friend. And so I started calling this guy I met that Sunday my best friend. I just started calling him Bestie. And 6 months later, he was my best friend in Newport Beach. Like we would hang out all the time. We'd do these man nights together. It was just fun. He was a really good guy. And then he moved to DC, and I moved up to San Marino, and then here, and we still text each other. And I he's in my phone as Bestie. He's Ben Newcott. But as I was the one thing that's striking to me about Muhammad Ali is almost in every interview, it comes up what kind of mind games he played as a boxer.
Yeah.
He would get into people's heads. And then with when he beat Sonny Lester, they keep showing that clip where he won the world title for the first time, and he beat Sonny Lester, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs. My face is still pretty. And I'm the world champ. I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. He just starts repeating. He starts screaming at the top of his lungs in the middle of a boxing ring. I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. And it's a little bit of that. Like he was telling his own story and kind of that's pretty gutsy. That's pretty.
Oh yeah.
That's what that's what made him, I think, kind of heads above, or just maybe not a heads above, just totally, absolutely outside the box, like different categorically than every other athlete that's ever come down the pipe.
Oh, zero question.
What?
Zero question. You're exactly right.
I know.
He's
the closest that I think that anybody else has ever come was with the Smith, the sprinter. Remember, he wore gold shoes in the Olympics.
Yeah.
I forget that guy's name, but because he ended up coming out and he was using roids, and they took his medal away. But that guy came close. You know, like wearing gold shoes and saying, you know, I'm gonna win the gold, and just naming and claiming it. Maybe.
Yeah. But that's the weird part, right? Like they're still cocky, right? Like there's still like arrogance for sure, and like Muhammad Ali certainly had enough of that to go around. But I think the combination of like standing for something, like the self-promoting part's interesting for sure, but the other stuff, like it's that the whole package of things is just something that is hard to believe. Like I don't know that we'll see that again in any real way. By what you're talking about, the way Muhammad Ali would talk in fights, I listened to an interview with George Foreman, who, when Muhammad Ali fought him, was a really good fighter and would go on to win the heavyweight championship belt later anyway. But he said sometime like in the third round of his fight with Ali the first time, like he hit him hard, like as hard as he could hit him, and Ali didn't even move. And he looked back at him and he said, "Is that all you got?" And then they fought the rest of the bout, right? But every time he just kept asking, "Is that all you got? Is that all you got?" So he did it for like 8 rounds. he just kept asking Foreman if that's all he had. And then finally Foreman goes, "Yeah, that's it."
That's all I got. That's about as good.
I love that story. It cracks me up every time because it tells you a little bit about George Foreman too. But it's just like, it's a great story.
I love anybody that names his daughter after himself.
George. Every one of his kids he named after himself.
Oh, thank you, George, for the grill.
That's
George
exactly right.
Absolutely. All right, my number 2. Even though this could cause a fire somewhere.
Uh-oh.
It's a C.S. Lewis quote. And it was a buddy of mine, a girl named Marissa. She posted it on her Facebook wall, and it says this: "The devil always sends errors into the world in pairs of opposites, and he always encourages us to spend a lot of time thinking which is the worst. You see why, of course. He relies on your extra dislike of the one error to draw you gradually into the opposite error."
Is that a political slant or what?
She was doing it towards the politics stuff, but I don't know. It struck me. That was just one of those, like the 5 best. This is one of those ones that I probably this in the same vein as the Louis C.K. I didn't expect to be struck from the side while looking at Facebook posts, but every once in a while, it's just is that true? Like that's what started. That's what started to ring in my head, and I think it is. Like I say the reason we Greg and I both know that Greg absolutely does not like C.S. Lewis.
That is so unfair.
And that balloon almost grows and envelops anybody that quotes C.S. Lewis. so that's why I knew that this would cut. But I think say what you will. Every once in a while, C.S. Lewis, he comes up with a little nugget, and this is one of them. I think this is one of those truths that I honestly think. And it goes. I wonder if this quote's from Screwtape, which I think is his best work. The Screwtape Letters is when he's talking demons amongst themselves, and it goes into that same. What I think is one of the most valuable things that C.S. Lewis gave to the church is the idea that when Paul is talking about we're in a battle of spiritual. We're in a spiritual battle rather than a physical battle. The strategist of the evil one, Satan stuff, is really to just and to bring the focus off of the valuable onto the invaluable, and focus off of what's really urgent onto what's falsely urgent, like, and I think this is one of those things that I think C.S. Lewis hits the nail on the head. I think, and this happens over and over in the church, like when I was going through Biola, this sexuality debate wasn't in the church. It was actually what was in the church was like the end times for some reason, and everybody was up in arms about whether there's going to be a rapture and a no rapture, pre-trib, post-trib, 7 dispensation versus 6 dispensation. There's just that it's not even, and I would even go further than C.S. Lewis in saying it's not one thing opposing the other, the two evils opposing each other. It happens even with two goods, two things.
Yeah.
I think I've said this before, and it was one of my 5 best in the past, but the Hunger Games, the second one, just remember who the real enemy is. I think that's this battle. I mean, like we get distracted by fighting, we love to fight. We love to disagree. We love to bicker. We love to all that stuff.
Yep.
And so this Facebook quote from Marissa really just brought me back into that. And so that's my 5 best. I don't know if you can really respond, because I don't know. What would happen if you said something? Yeah. Not well. Get out.
Week's 2 bets I've gotten to. I don't think it works that way, but I get the value of sort of naming these two evils that, I don't know. My own bias is, even around the Satan stuff, I think, is just that, like, he just doesn't need much help. like we're, we just, we do this to ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, it's, and like culturally we do it to ourselves, individually we do it to ourselves. It's just systemic. Like we just, I don't know. I'm just not sure Satan needs all the help that, I don't think we need to give him all the credit for the evils in the world. But I get what C.S. Lewis is going after. I think it's an interesting quote. I got to play with it some more, because I'm not entirely sure what he means by the two evils thing, but I definitely thought of Trump and Clinton, so that's something.
It made me also think of a new buddy of mine in this Muskegon town I'm living in, is the pastor of the Presbyterian Church, First Pres. His name's Jim Roush, and just a good, solid guy. He's like 6'6", gentle giant, just really good guy. But he has told me this a couple times. He just says, I think because he's in the middle of the Peace USA debate, like the ordaining of homosexuals and that kind of jazz. And he says, I get, every once in a while, I get this picture of us fighting, and it's from a objective, like big picture view.
Sure.
And I'm on one side, maybe somebody I love and who is following after Christ is on the other side, and we're just going at it. We're just yelling at each other. We're just fighting and all this stuff. And then I get a picture of God stepping in and saying, neither of you is right. There is something else over here that I want you focused on. And I like the wisdom in that little story, because I think there's truth in it. You know, and I agree with you in that. I don't think we have to label the devil as the introducer of these contradictory.
Yeah. No, but I'm with you. It reminds me of there's a Hauerwas quote where he used to say all the time, God, you can take away my friends, but don't take away my enemies. Because if you take away my enemies, I won't know who I am anymore. And, there's something going on with that too, right? Like you're in the story, in your buddy's big picture observation there. Like we need, or we've become adept at only knowing who we are in relation to who we're not.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous place, I think.
Truth, what's your 3?
All right, my number 3 is
three.
There's a really ridiculous video series on the Atlantic website. I think that's where it is, called "If Our Bodies Could Talk." They're like these 4 or 5 minute videos, and it's just this one guy who seems like a pretty young guy. Like I don't know if he's a writer or an editor for Atlantic, but they basically gave him free reign to make these videos about how to kind of hack our bodies. Like what are things we should be doing to be healthier, and but they're not just generic exercise more or something like that. So he spends one whole time getting his the bacteria in his stomach measured so he can figure out what kind of probiotics he should take to encourage what kind of bacterial growth and things. It's really weirdly sciencey kind of stuff. But the guy is just strange, in exactly the kind of strange I really like. I laughed the whole way through it, and it's not meant to be straight comedy. I don't think it's just meant to be kind of awkward, or he is just kind of awkward, so it's going to be that way. But if you haven't seen him yet, If Our Bodies Could Talk, he had one recently, and this is how I found it. I think he has one for making your cell phone less addicting, which is. You can go into your settings and just make everything grayscale. So exactly. So and his point is everything's color coded to draw your attention, but if you make it boring, you won't look at it as often. So I don't know if it works. I haven't tried it since he posted it, but the last line of the whole thing, he has this 4-minute thing where he's teaching you how to do it and he's explaining why it's important and how boring it is. And he goes, and then ever since I did it, I only look at my phone 200 or 300 times a day. But completely straight faced. And it's just it's so funny because he's just so you can't even tell for sure if he's making a joke. If he's just down from 600, 200 to 300 is a really good number, or what he's doing. But it cracked me up. So anyway, I just kind of fell into that sort of black hole of looking at those videos, and they're great. Every one of them is really, really interesting.
That's cool.
So
I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, they're pretty good. I think you'll enjoy them. I'm pretty confident you'll enjoy the awkwardness of them, if nothing else. And they're kind of interesting. They're on the front edge of organic health and things like that. So it's kind of interesting.
That's good stuff, bro. That's good. All right. My number 3, I think let's go with, it was my birthday on Saturday. Yeah. I turned 42 or 41. I'm not sure which. I think
Holy
42.
Crap, man. You're getting old, dude.
I know. But it was the perfect understated birthday. I really enjoyed, and it was cool. And birthdays are hit or miss, because it makes me miss my mom. It makes me miss my. It makes you feel old. You start to think about your life, that kind of stuff. And I did just your average stuff. I mowed the lawn with my son, and my son used a mower for the first time. Which this church member had given, which was really cool. The highlight was just I had an appointment. God made this appointment with with this new new acquaintance, new friend. I don't know. Yeah, it was cool. We went over I mowed the lawn in the morning, and then I come back in the afternoon. I got a big yard.
Yeah.
And then we went in between. We went to this friend of ours, this new friend of ours. He's a pastor just right down the road from me at this church plant. His neighborhood was doing one of those garage sales, and so we went over to his house, and we were just looking at stuff, and then he introduced me to this worship leader of this other church that's kind of in the area, a guy named Christopher White, and he's about to turn 42, which is what I think I am. He's turning 42 in August. And he kind of looks like me. Except he has like a chin strap beard, and he's wearing glasses, and I used to wear glasses. And he leads worship at this place called The Front Porch and meets on Saturday nights. And he's from San Diego, and his last church stint had some bumps in it, like all of ours have. And then right now he's feeling like, he's in Muskegon, and he doesn't really know why. He was just going through, like, I don't know, my call is really fuzzy right now. It's like coming through really fuzzy, and it was just really neat to run across somebody that was kind of a alien in the California to Michigan sense.
Yeah.
And then also, and it turns out he is a childhood friend of one of my roommates back at Biola, a guy named Jeff Doolittle, talented music, like worship leader guy.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it was one of those things that, like, as I was reflecting on just my life, because the birthday kind of just stirs that stuff up.
Yeah.
I just got a snapshot of how little and how big God is, that like little in the sense that, and I really do think there's moments like this that he says, let's move these people around and have their paths cross at this particular moment. Like I think that, being Reformed, sovereignty of God's kind of a big deal with me, but, and then the bigness of it is just to hold all this in his hand, to hold all of this in his mind, or to hold all of this, just like literally holding all this and caring about the little details, just as impressive. Like it's an impressive aspect of the God we serve, and to be big enough that his caring matters. It was cool.
So good, man.
It was a cool aspect of a 42nd birthday. It was cool.
No doubt. And it's so cool when God puts those people in our lives. Like it's because you can't make them be there, like that's
and it
awesome. And
it had the you and I sense of meeting,
nice.
Like whether he gets called away, whether I get called away, whether something happened, like who knows what's going to happen. Now I got another brother on the path to know.
That's awesome. Yeah, and he plays music, so that's not bad either.
Yeah, and he's prayerfully discerning, maybe because his Sunday mornings are free, so maybe it'll launch the second service with us. I don't know. We'll see.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. I wanted zero pressure, zero of that stuff, but it's cool. It's cool that God put that guy in my life.
That's awesome. All right, my number 4 is just summer reading. For whatever reason, and I know movies do this, right? Like movies aim to have like their big releases in the summer, but I never really noticed that that's true with books. I don't know if it is true or not. But this summer, like already there's been some like ridiculous releases of guys that like really matter to me, not necessarily enormous all across the world, I suppose. But like, so Chuck Klosterman just released a new book yesterday, and I love Chuck Klosterman stuff because, same age range and wheelhouse and all of that. And then James K. Smith, I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago, released a new book, and that book is great. And then William Kavanaugh just released a new book too.
Yeah.
And that one's awesome. So I'm like, halfway through each of these 3 books already, but it's and then like later this summer, there's a couple of fiction writers like Don DeLillo's releasing a book this summer. Like, I don't know why, like it goes in cycles where there's just not a lot of books that are super interesting or arguments maybe aren't being moved forward or whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, this is great. So I have I'm excited about having the summer to read this stuff and kind of immerse myself in certain books and play with it. So I'm really looking forward to that stuff.
I love that. I love the summer for that fact. I think it is intentional. I have to think it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe, but it seems like you and I are on the same reading cycle. Like summer usually is when I attack.
Yeah,
read. I just fall in love with reading again every time.
Yep,
and it's that's exciting that there's really good stuff coming out. I dig those moments.
And I would recommend all 3 of those books. The new Chuck Klosterman book is "But What If We're Wrong," and it's a fascinating, it's a really interesting book. And then the James K. Smith is "You Are What You Love," which is it's really, really helpful, solid kind of how to think about humanity. And then William Kavanaugh's new book is called "Field Hospital," and it's kind of he's playing with this metaphor for what it means to be the church engaging the world. It's really, really good. So.
My view of Canada is totally transforming.
What does that have to do with anything?
He's from Canada, right?
No, he's not. He's not.
He just seems Canadian.
He does. He's super nice like that, yeah.
Yeah. He's not a Canadian. What's that about?
Anyway, James K. Smith is Canadian, though.
Oh.
Or he was born in Winnipeg, I think. Born and raised in Winnipeg.
Well, I guess that's maybe my thing of Canada. I don't know.
Goofball.
I am kind of a goofball. All right, my number 4 is Hamilton.
All right,
that's it.
You got it. All right, you got to walk me through this thing because
because as a kid, it goes to my journey. You know what I mean? Like as a kid, my mom made me watch Sound of Music and got me into musicals, but not like she tried to make me into musicals, but then I detest musicals. There's the whole musical side, and so and then the Glee thing hits, and I'm like, this stinks. What are all these people? What are all these people? And then the girl from Glee kind of said, she said, a musical is when music in a movie or a play moves the story forward.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But that was, and then this Hamilton guy comes out of nowhere. I've only seen clips. Like like most of the country, I would love to I'd love to go to New York just to see Hamilton, just to see if I can get pictures to it. But just from the little glimpses that I've seen of the musical and from what everybody's saying, it's a game changer. Corbin, who took over for Craig Kilborn, he was on Colbert the other night, and he was just talking about how, wow, holy cow, it's a loud weed whacker. That's a weed whacker in my office or something.
So you're flushing a toilet or something. Like, what's going
on?
No,
it's a trimmer. It's a trimmer.
Yeah,
that's crazy. A guy's name is Jack Timmer, and he's using the trimmer outside my window.
We should put that in our musical, Jason.
Yeah. Anywho, but James Corbin was just saying, at the end of Hamilton, I wish there was more I could do, because I've done standing ovation at other plays, or musicals. I wish there was something else, I could do, like, and Stephen Colbert, like, maybe just rip off your arms and and hit your head with it, yeah. And he was like, yeah, maybe we'd change arms. I changed arms for you. I changed arms for, like, I handed my arm to somebody and they handed me their arms. But their point was, and that more than Hamilton is the fifth best. I love when the things bring it to a new level.
Yeah.
Like and
I'm
that's
really
what this
intrigued.
is.
Like I'm really intrigued about what that means and why Hamilton works. Like Calvin loves it. Like loves the music of it. I haven't really listened to it much or watched much on it. But the last play that was supposedly going to do that was Rent, and that play sucked. So I'm a little gun shy on that. This is going to change Broadway forever. Like maybe, hopefully, I don't know. I'm all over the map on musical stuff. I don't love it as a rule, but I am intrigued by this one. And you're right. Like everybody who's seen it has that kind of response to it. So I'm really intrigued.
And this kind of goes into my fifth one, but or fourth. Yeah, it's my fifth one. I'll save the fifth one. It's
your fourth one, so save the fifth one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll save the fifth one. But let me just say that the hip hop aspect of it,
okay,
is really transformative. I think when hip hop adds what it has to offer to musicals, I think there's no there's no looking back. I fear that there's going to be a bunch of horrible musicals.
Oh, there already are, Jason. You don't have to be afraid of
I know, but with a specific category of trying to be Hamilton.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and I think a part of it is the author and that guy that's one of the stars of it, Lin-Manuel Miranda. Yeah. Him being so outspoken, and he's from Cuba, and so him being kind of on the forefront of what's going on in Cuba and America right now.
Yeah,
has a part to play in it too. It has a Rage Against the Machine feel to it, you know. Yeah. And I we both love that. Yeah. We just the countercultural within cultural that's a really fascinating piece.
Yes, I'm always interested in that. I'm with you. All right, my fifth one actually is a little bit of that kind of thing, the countercultural piece. My fifth one was John Oliver forgiving the medical debts of like $15 million worth of medical debt on his TV show this week. So really interesting. There's a Christian organization, or there used to be, called like Jubilee something. And I can't remember what the something was, but it's like Jubilee, and then they were the first people I ever heard of who did this, which is you can buy people's debt for pennies on the dollar, basically. So John Oliver's example is he was able to bundle all this medical debt, just medical debt that people owe for being in the hospital or whatever. And he was able to get $15 million of that for $60,000. Because of the way the system is set up, which is super fascinating and just seems totally wrong on so many levels. But there's this Jubilee group was going around coordinating people to buy that stuff up and just release it in the same kind of, just this idea of forgiving debts in Jubilee year. So it kind of made sense with the scriptural image. But I've always it struck me that that's something a church ought to be able to do, depending on if you live in the right state and all that kind of stuff. But it's because the other thing that I always thought would be fascinating is if you just released $15 million of people's debt, if you sent them letters saying this is what you did and why you did it, I wonder how many of them would pay towards somebody else's debt being relieved.
Yeah.
Like if you just said, hey, here's the deal. Like we want to do this again. We just spent $60,000. We want to spend $60,000 the next time, but we need to get that $60,000 from people who had 15 million released. It just seems like you could go forever sort of raising that money pretty easily. I don't know for sure. But anyway, that was fascinating in and of its own right. But then when you pair that with the gospel readings and the lectionary readings for this Sunday, it's really powerful, because this Sunday's lectionary readings are all centered around forgiveness. So you have the Psalm 32 where, blessed is the man whose sins are forgiven. When I didn't confess, my body wasted away, all that kind of stuff. And then, and so just like you have this, like, what the weight of this kind of debt does on people. And then to be able to free that or forgive that is really fascinating. And then you have Jesus and the woman at the Pharisee's house talking about, Jesus saying, who's gonna basically who feels more forgiven, the guy who has $500 removed or 50 or whatever, right? And it's just like, so anyway, it's a super interesting, like, that the timing of that was fascinating, but that entire crediting system is just brutal. Like, it's like the dirtiest thing ever. It feels
so he paid 60,000. He got 15 million or 16 million.
Yeah. So here's what happens. You owe a hospital $10,000 or something, right?
Yeah.
But the hospital, after a certain amount of time, just writes it off and just says, we're not going to get that $10,000. So we're going to send it to a collection agency to collect it. So the collection agency will start to collect on behalf of the hospital. But then after a certain amount of time, if they're just not getting the money, then they will sell that debt, and usually combined with other debt. So our $10,000 now, they'll look at it and there'll be another agency that comes in and says, we would like to buy that debt because we think we can get the money back through our tactics of whatever. We're really good at getting money back. So if you give us that $10,000 that guy owes you, we'll give you $2,000 for that $10,000 or whatever. It's probably way less than that. And then they now have the right, they have your social security information, all that kind of stuff, to contact you to try to collect that $10,000, even though now it's like 2 or 3 steps removed from the actual place that was owed the $10,000. But the hospital or whoever else, usually an insurance company or something, just writes off the difference. So it's like, all right, well, we got a couple $100 from that guy. That's all we're going to get. Now we'll see if we can get a couple $100 from this guy trying to buy the debt. And then that's, that $10,000 thing ended up, and so they can write that loss in, and that raises insurance prices, does a bunch of other things too. But now that debt becomes a commodity, right? Because it's something you own these people's information then, which allows you to do whatever you need to do to collect that information. And sometimes it's taking them to court. Sometimes it's garnishing wages and that kind of thing, but it's not fun work. So, the other thing is, so you buy $15 million of debt at $60,000, right? So if he just forgave it, but if it was like us and we were running it as a business, we would spend that $60,000, but now we have the names and the debts of $15 million worth of things. So even if we only get like 1% or 10% of that $15 million back, we've still made a huge profit, right? Because if we make $150,000 back on that 15 million, then we still made 90 grand.
Yeah.
So, and then you factor out the cost of people who have to call and everything else, but it's a pretty inexpensive way to start rolling that stuff over. You just have to have zero moral conscience. That's the trick. So anyway, John Oliver explains this in detail, and it's kind of interesting the way he explains it, but then he gives it away. For that 60 grand, he was able to give away $15 million essentially, which is pretty cool. But it's one of those things that the more you spend, so if you were able to pool $100,000 with people, you can get a lot of millions of dollars, and you can pick what kind of debt you want. You can do it with credit card debt. You can do it with health insurance debt. You can do it with student loans. There's all kinds of different mixtures and ways to do it.
And that grace begetting grace piece, I think you're onto something. If you did, I think you could get it going forever. You know what I mean? Like those.
I think so, right? Like
those. Once you're forgiven, you forgive. You know, it's that. I think that's a cool idea. I like that. That's really neat. I'm really glad you brought that up.
Because if you owe $10,000 and I call you and say, or I send you a letter that says, "Hey, congratulations, this Jubilee Year group has we've paid off your debt. You don't owe that $10,000 anymore. But we want to continue and do that forward. If you throw in $100, then we can use that money to help buy down some other person's debt or whatever. I mean, you can give whatever you want, but if you give this much, this is what will happen with it. I don't think you would need that many people to be excited and do it. And it's a totally different thing than, hey, will you pay this off because you owe it to us or whatever, whatever.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. That'd be a good sociological experiment.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, my fifth and final. Was that your fifth? That was your fifth.
That was my fifth, yeah.
And we're running long too, so I'll make this quick.
Not too bad. We're doing all right.
Yeah. A couple years ago, a mutual friend of mine, or yours, a guy named Kyle Gillespie, he gave me a CD by a guy named Lecrae.
Yeah.
And the CD is Anomaly. You remember that came out, I think it's like his third most recent. Anyway, Lecrae I think he's out of Atlanta or Hotlanta.
You said Atlanta or Hotlanta.
Yeah. and/or.
Yeah, and/or Hotlanta.
Gotcha. And/or roll.
Yeah, that's good.
But I just appreciate when a band or a singer songwriter or a musician, in this case Lecrae, I enjoy albums that are well thought out and good from beginning to end. And that's and I'm grateful for that musician, the guy Lecrae. You could, like, his early stuff was just straight up, like, he was just becoming a Christian, you could tell, and he was just learning how to rap, and it was good, but not great.
Yeah.
And then he put out some albums, and they got better and better musically and more complex, like theologically or like thematically. And Anomaly, it's just a good disc from beginning to end. And I've just been, this last week, just, maybe it was partially because gifts are always better than something you buy.
Yeah, that's true.
And then in the hip hop genre, there's such a, like, other than Lecrae, my favorite hip hop artist is J5. And before that, there was Jurassic 5. And before that, it was like Run DMC. And there's like the people right out of the gate, like Run DMC and Fat Boys. But then it just took a dip, and I don't know. There's the lack of creativity and the lack of moral compass in the hip hop genre is astounding to me.
Yeah, it makes it almost impossible to listen to. I can't do it. Like I used to really like hip hop when I was younger. Like what you're naming, that gap though. Like I think around honestly, like around gangster rap is about where I dropped, because I just couldn't stay with like NWA and Snoop Dogg and all. Like it just became too violent or too whatever for me.
Yeah, it got a little wild. It got a little crazy. That's an understatement. But just to have that whole genre back in, to have it, like, he's good. He's a follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
He's a student of music, because he actually has a lot of styles all within his, I think he has listened to gangster rap. There's some stuff that got his sons, like an NWA song or like a Cube song or something. But he's got soul in there too. I'm super impressed with just this last week. I was just really encouraged by the artist Lecrae, and especially that album Anomaly. I love when, and I think that's the first hip hop disc that's in that category for me.
Huh.
Because there's Fugazi, 13 songs. There's U2, Joshua Tree. There's, a band called Far out of California, Waters and Solutions. Like there's this certain CD.
What's the best song on the album?
I think the best song might be the title track, Anomaly, or it's a few after that, and I don't even know the song. Maybe I'll come back to with the name of that song, but it's the title track Anomaly is pretty ridiculous. It's pretty good. But then there's a track later on that is that he does something cool with his voice. He goes da 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 da. Like and that hook just gets stuck in your head. Like I don't even know what he's saying, but and I'll be mowing the lawn, or I'll be just doing something, and then that little hook will hook in my head. But I think that's a testimony to the album too. I don't even know the favorite song because it's it's a solid. I was starting to say I have this certain CD book, like it holds CDs because I listen to CDs still. It's so crazy that these millennials are like, "What's this thing? What's this circular disc?" Not only do they not know what records are, 8-tracks or tape or reel-to-reel tapes, they're just like, "What's a CD?" I'm like, "Oh gosh, we're getting old fast." It's crazy, but I have this certain CD book that I put these type of albums in. Like Modest Mouse, Moon in Antarctica. Like that caliber, like the front. And this is the first. I think this is the first disc that's twofold. I think it's the first disc that's Believer, like they're followers of Jesus, and it's hip hop.
How about that?
Yeah, actually, I think
I don't like you disparaging U2 like that, by the way, just for the record.
What?
Believers, yeah.
Yeah, they're Believers, and then also I just said no, and Fielding's in there too.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about Fielding.
Fielding's second disc is in there too. So
yes.
Yeah, and
that's a good album.
There's a couple. That's not the First Christian. So it's
but hip hop for sure.
I overstated it.
Yeah,
it's the first that even comes close to hip hop.
You don't have any Beastie Boy albums in there?
I don't because I don't think they have one. The closest one would be their Sounds and Effects. Like the one that has all the instrumental stuff.
Yeah,
I love that one from beginning to end. And the one with Sabotage, Ill Communication's pretty good.
Ill Communication's pretty good, but yeah, you're right. There's some down spots.
I have a hard time putting in. That brings up another point. When they put there were so many hip hop artists that were close to making it, but they put in like answering machine messages, or like they, their cousin calling on the phone saying, "Yo, you're really good." I don't know. I just did. I don't. And there's a bunch of Pearl Jam albums that don't make it in because of that too.
Crazy. All right, man.
I sure love you, buddy.
Hey, I'm going to see you in a couple weeks, so we're not too far.
That's crazy. That's crazy talk.
Record one of these live.
That's crazy talk. And one of these times I get to go first, right? Is that next time?
Week? You went last. We were first last week.
I don't think so.
All right, for sure.
My gut is telling me no. The truthiness is just like.
Oh boy! All right, brother.
I'll see you next week.
All right,
bye. You still there?
Hold on, I haven't stopped.